I welcome all my guests to this lovely panel discussion. And of course, we have our participants who've been with us. And
Actually, you're not audible.
No, he is.
Yes.
You're a bit soft, sir, if you could just please.
okay. So I said I welcome my guests to this wonderful panel discussion. And also, I welcome you not only on behalf of Mindler, but hundreds of educators who've been with us, and there are many more who are listening to us. Okay, great. So let me set the context for the day. When we are talking about education trends in 2021, as dear participants, all of you know that 2020 has not been an easy year for any of us, especially for the education industry. And 2021 doesn't seem easy. There are a lot of challenges, a lot of things, a lot of changes, both on the school front and the higher education. We must give credit where it's due. Schools have been working overnight to make sure that the education is continuing. Whether school buildings have been shut for a while, and you never know, COVID is coming back again. However, schools and teachers and administrators, heads of schools, they have gone overboard to make sure that education should continue. However, we face serious challenges. So therefore, I'm going to start with the first one. Let's start with you, Dr. Saraswat. My question to you, and of course, then we will move to the entire panel, is, so with this year also not looking great as of now, how are schools going to keep the students motivated and, of course, effective learning to be transferred across to schools? I would request, um, your opening statement on how does this year look like, and then I would move to the other members for their opening statements.
It will be a daunting task, no matter what people say, because so far it was just going to sink in that we were through the COVID and we started preparing ourselves for offline preparations. And when these kids came back, we saw the difference of almost 20% what was happening online and offline. And now this next second wave has arrived, and the probability is that schools will not be allowed to reopen. So it will be a daunting task. And in my opinion, what we would have to, as school masters, I'm just talking about as a school master, we would have to keep the child in focus. The focus has to be on the child more than on his academics or academic achievements. How we help him to engage judiciously for the entire day, for several weeks and several months, should become more important. There could be a possibility that we divide the entire day into 4 or 5 parts, and academic remains just one little part, so that they are not off practice, whether it's language or mathematical abilities, but they should also know that how they should be able to spend the time meaningfully, so that there is no negativity in their personalities. They would have to also understand how to spend their time in constructive activities as much as possible.
Right.
So that is one aspect. Another aspect is that we would have to again engage with the parents to help their kids to spend this time as meaningfully as possible. So as a teacher and as a father, I'm being very honest that I'm actually not looking at academics as seriously as the mental, social, and emotional health of the child. There is another data that all of us, have restarted our school. Around between 300 to 500 kids art back in our campus. And all my colleagues will bear with me that these kids have come back, overweight, with a lesser span of focus. They cannot sit even for 10 minutes. They would need the gadget to go back. They cannot sit and write for 3 hours. So there are several challenges, and we would have to prepare our kids, ourselves, and our parents that how do we address these challenges. So that's my main worry at this point of time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Saraswat. Dr. Singh, over to you, please, for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Parikshit. I mean, what Dr. Saraswat was talking made a lot of sense, and I don't want to drag on this. We know schools were already invented, but now we have really come on a platform where we have to reinvent. We have to rethink, we have to reimagine, we have to redesign. And not only do we have to think about the new pedagogical styles, we have to think about new strategies. My concern is not what is going to happen. My concern is what type of knowledge are we going to impart now to the students? The future of the world sitting in the classrooms of today are not even in the classrooms. When we talk about the hybrid, which has become a threat, I said it's become a beautiful, engaging platform today. India was waiting. The world was waiting. But that wait would soon end and we would come into the practical world. We never thought, because we were never prepared it would come so sudden to us. The engaging platform on a digital world today is creating what we call the new era, which is coming into the education. We must understand, we must take this as a challenge. We are educators. We need to tell the young minds, we either must have a fright, or we fight, or we take a flight. Now, out of these three words, we'll have to make a deliberate choice. Either we hide out in the curtains and say, okay, we are frightful of the situation, or we'll fight it out. Gone are the two words. We need to now take a flight and go upwards. I only want to emphasize, Parikshit, only on 4 Ds. And that will summarize my talk.
Right.
We need to discover. We need to define. We need to design. And we need to deliver. If we allow these 4 Ds to come in a form, what I've said, if we discover the new strategies, we define those strategies, how we have to implement them, we design the curriculum for these new strategies, we will be able to deliver. And this is the future, what pandemic has taught us, and we have to face it. That's my opening remark.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, yeah, very well said. And I love those 4 Ds. Mr. Roshan, over to you, please.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today, and for all the participants. I am also a proud graduate of the ICCC program, so great that you're all doing this, and I had a great time on it. With reference to the question, I mean, I completely agree with what the colleagues have said. Here in UP, we had a particularly strange situation where we opened the schools and then at the beginning of this month, and then we've just been ordered to close them again. I don't know if that's the same thing in other states as well. So it's a bit of an up and down. And for the opening, in the weeks running up and even after the opening, we had put in a lot of effort, every teacher had put in a lot of effort into actually convincing parents to send the kids back, because I think there was a big comfort zone about the online classes. And online classes, of course, we have been able to deliver a pretty high quality of online class, and that's probably why they were wanting to continue. But ultimately, we need to get back into that face-to-face mode, and we've been trying to convince the parents. So we went through a lot of efforts. We were even, teachers were going to homes of parents and explaining and convincing about the COVID protocol. And all that was done. And then, of course, it's been reversed again. So whatever confidence has been built up with great difficulty, that has again gone down. So, as Dr. Saraswat was saying, it is going to be a tough ride back, and we need to get the kids back into that focused mindset, and get them really, in the mode of wanting to be in school and wanting to learn and wanting to put in that kind of hard work face to face that they used to put in. So we've got the exam period coming up now. Now let's see how that affects kids, because I'm sort of optimistic that exams always focus people's minds. And I'm interacting with kids. I heard them joking that they're now cramming in whatever they didn't learn in 1 year. They're now cramming into the next couple of weeks. So some of them do have that attitude, and I think we can be optimistic that the exams might channel people into the right mindset in an accelerated fashion. So let's see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roshan. Mr. Rashid.
So I have a slightly different view on all this. While I understand that the year was, of course, a tremendous stress for all of us, parents, students, teachers, businessmen. We're talking about loss of, lives, of course, loss of working hours, loss of teaching time, learning time. But it also did pave a way for what we call lots of innovations. I think Dr. Singh was saying about discover. And I think one of the things we discovered around the pandemic was about the fact that the human ability to come up with new ideas and perseverance of colleagues and students. I think lots of them quickly adopted to the new changes. They delivered quite well, put in hours of work, looked after the mental well-being of not only students but also parents. In fact, that's one of the advantage of boarding schools, is that we do have a very small community in terms of engagement, and very close one. So I think that was very important. The innovation, of course, would only get better over the period of time, and what India wasn't ready for last 20 years in terms of ICT and use of technology in the classroom, I think last 1 year has actually brought that process much forward, and that's going to stay. Uh, in the backlight of all this, in fact, we also had the new education policy that was rolled out. And if you look at that, I think that does brings a bit of a glimmer of hope across various areas, but also obviously has issues and concerns that probably we'll talk about it later in the talk. So I think grit, determination, lots of good hope, humor, all this will be needed in next 1 year. While I don't see us going back to complete lockdown mode, but there will be disadvantages, I think, in this year as well. And let's hope and pray for better.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually that's all that we can do. We can definitely hope and be ready, of course, with Plan B and Plan C. Dr. Bali, over to you, please.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Dana, for inviting me over and the Mindler team. It's an esteemed panel, and I'm honored to be in company of all these great stalwarts. So much to learn from them. Coming on your question, I'm a little optimistic about the whole thing. I think pre-COVID and post-COVID, the world is completely different, including educational fraternity. I would say pre-COVID was still a struggle between tradition and what to do and what not to do. But COVID pushed us beyond the wall or beyond the limit. It threw such challenges at us that invention came out of it. I'm so happy to state that our school was one of the very few schools in the beginning to go online. 22nd of March 2020, the lockdown was announced. 25th of March, we had online classes going on. So imagine a year before COVID, when everybody in the country used to think, oh, it's so difficult to do exchange with school in Argentina. It's so difficult to organize an exchange with Europe. It was considered to be only the game for elite schools. But during COVID, the entire world connected. The schools who are budget schools had exchange, which was virtual exchange with schools from Brazil, schools from Southeast, schools from Europe, schools from North America. That was one positive which came out. Number two, it brought everyone around the world in education on the same level playing field. Be it the government schools, be it the budget schools, be it the day schools or the boarding schools in India or anywhere else in the world, were on the same page. There was a lot of talk, like the concerns which people are raising today were the same concerns which people were discussing during the COVID, that children will have a lot of mental issues or psychological issues, and We'll have to hire a lot of counselors. I think COVID did a lot of good for mental health, because this was the first time when the families came together. This was the first time when children spent quality time with their parents. This was first time when they saw their dads and the moms sitting and talking something constructively, because we were so much engrossed in our own works. So it shook all of us. So if I look back this 1 year for myself or my son as a student or my family as parents, I would say it left a lot of positives for us. Yes, there are challenges which are thrown at us day in and day out. Like we opened schools in Telangana and then government again shut it down with just 1 hour, not even 1 hour notice. Imagine for us, which is a day come boarding school, to send boarders back all the way is not convenient. Definitely, there will be challenges when they have to write their board exams, especially the senior students, because the board exams will not be online, it will be offline. They are off practice, definitely. But there is no, we are getting into a future where the world is unknown, where the professions are unknown. We don't know what professions our students are getting into. Those professions, most of those professions don't even exist today. So I see this entire COVID time as an opportunity, as Dr. Jakpreet Singh said, rather than looking at a challenge, because it's your choice. And us as educators and leaders of the schools, I think we have to show this particular crisis as an opportunity to these youngsters, that you have a huge future lying in front of you and make most of it. I think this has brought us closer to the future. This particular change was required because we were too much into the traditional mode of learning, where we were either afraid of technology or we were a little hesitant in accepting technology. Now, where a time has come where we have to be hybrid for the most of the time, I hope that we carry the good things we have practiced during COVID and blend with the good practices which we're doing before COVID, and then make a positive change. That's what I feel about the whole thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bali. Dr. Bali, you touched upon a point which I heard from my other panelists also, which is that the children are very, very short on practice. All right. And of course, it's been an online year. The tests have been online. All right. Mostly we've done virtually every possible exam online, right? Now, the new reality is board exams are going to be offline. All entrance exams, the big entrance exams on, offline. And of course, with few other entrance exams, they will work around, the online space. And of course, if it is online, then it's going to be remote proctoring. Now, my question to you is, students are woefully short of practice, right? Now, how are we dealing with that? Now, I need a very, very precise and specific replies from all of you. One is, so I want a reply to, one is they're short of practice. Number two, we are not even sure how much have they grasped. So the entire year. So how do you think the schools are, waking up to this challenge and working on this? Please, over to you, Dr. Bali. We'll start with you.
Okay, first of all, we were fortunate that we got that window wherein class 10 and 12 did manage to write one pre-final exam in school. Okay. And I'll be very honest, most of them told me one-on-one that, sir, it was extremely difficult for us because we were out of habit for writing notes. We were out of habit for writing such formal exams. Now, as an educator and as a school, we are constantly counseling them, counseling the parents. We are telling them to still, giving them worksheets to make sure that they write and do it. But I would like to take it at a bigger forum. I feel that, I hope that boards of education, whether it is CBSE or ICSE or ISC, have taken this into consideration in a big way, because they need to be creative in the way they construct their question papers this year. They cannot make question papers the way they used to before COVID. That was not the time when, and it's not about, you were absolutely correct, it's not about reducing the syllabus and thinking that, oh, they studied less. You also have to think about their writing skills, their aptitude and mental ability to sit for a 3-hour exam. It's not easy. It's not easy for anyone. You send Sachin Tendulkar without practice to play a cricket match. It'll be a fluke if he scores well. You can't guarantee it, right? Similar is for the examination. So these are the challenges which we are facing. I think the boards need to look into it deeper. We are writing to the boards from our end. We are raising it in different forums which we have. What we are doing as an educator from the school is we are regularly in touch with the parents and the students. We are giving them worksheets. We are counseling them to write and share those sheets with us. We are advising them to, attempt smaller tests at home, so that can help. But how many of them are doing it genuinely or not is something I'm afraid I cannot comment on.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Singh.
Well, I've been very lucky in the sense because as what Mr. Bali was saying, we were fortunate to have our boys in November who continue to stay till date today. Okay. So we got a nearly 4 months term with them. Now, we've been a fortunate school where we did think of an early opening and we got the children of our senior 3 forms back into the school. Now, we not only did we realize that when we started doing the mocks, we realized that the boys were not able to write for 3 hours. They knew the content. So what happened was, from the data, what we kept talking about, from a want which became the need, we transferred. Now that data which was transferred, the content to the connect did not happen. Now what happened when the children came here? The physical environment taxed them. And that is the time when we started conducting the mocks, and the boys said, "Sir, can't we take on an oral?" I remember a boy of mine sitting down for a political science and a psychology paper when I had to write a transcript. Write a script. He did not have enough of strength in his finger muscles. He could not hold the pen for 3 hours. Now that reconditioning had to happen. So we did give a lot of reconditioning to the boys. We prepared them. We've had a set of mock tests. We prepared them to come into the pre-boards. We took the pre-boards. I'm very lucky that my 10th class, who has taken the ICCSE final board exam, have sailed it through. But the 2 classes, that is my 11th and the 12th, now 12th is waiting for the IIC exams to happen. They've got another 3 months. Either we fatigue them, either we keep repeating this, what we say which is now reconditioning. I think it's very important for us to understand the psyche of the child at this moment also. He knows I know it, but to deliver it on the paper is now becoming a challenge. Till now, he was on an online mode and he was writing and we were accepting it, and the integrity and the honesty code was being believed. But now when it comes to a sudden announcement, we are going to just sit down with a physical exam. The boy needs to recondition himself now. That all students will now have to come back to that old, which they've forgotten, the old normalcy. And this is my fear. So all I can recommend is what my experience has taught me over the past COVID. We need to give them a lot of training. We need to keep giving them a lot of counseling. We keep giving them a lot of physical and mental strength, being mindful that children need our support at this moment. And only thing how we can support them is keep giving them that strength. You will be able to write a 3-hour paper. There is enough of evidence that you have taken your pre-boards, you've taken your mock exams. Keep that drill on, and I'm sure we will go for a better future.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Roshan.
So although normally I'm a massive advocate of technology and the adoption of technology, and indeed the pandemic was obviously, a massive opportunity to accelerate that. When it came to assessment, we actually insisted that throughout the pandemic, that kids should continue to do a lot of pen and paper type assignments and even assessment practice. And whether or not we were able to adequately, mark the copies of that was a different question. But just keeping up that practice of doing the writing under time conditions was so important, because if we had not done that, then I think now we would be in a situation where our kids would be so out of practice that they wouldn't be able to learn in time. So that's been a great blessing. But apart from that, I fear, I hope this is not the case, but I fear that the boards are likely to administer exams in the way that they normally do, the ICC and CBSE, and then afterwards, inevitably, the performance is going to be much lower than expected, and then they're going to just inflate all the marks. And because if you look at data, even in normal years pre-COVID, both the Indian boards used to do marks inflation quite significantly. So I fear that they're not going to hold back from that. So I worry that children's hard work is not necessarily going to be reflected in the board outcomes this year. We can hope that's not the case, and those, if any panelists here and any participants have influence in the board circles to try to prevent that from being the case, then I hope that they can exercise that influence. But otherwise, that's my fear. So meanwhile, on the internal examinations of the school, of course, for up to class 8th and all, we are completely rethinking the way it's done. And even throughout the pandemic, it was a great opportunity to introduce assessment through other techniques like, project-based assessment. So, in our typical kind of ICSE curriculum, we didn't have a huge amount of that, unfortunately. So we introduced that because it was a way of remotely doing assessment through rubrics and through other methods. And that actually was a great boost to skills-based learning. So a blessing in disguise in a way. And that's something that for our internal things, we're going to continue. But yeah, as I say, for the boards, let's hope that they're not going to just do the normal thing and then inflate the marks.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Mr. Roshan. Before I go to Mr. Rashid, what I want to share with you, and if all of you are listening carefully, dear educators, you can see the difficulty that even schools are having. It's not easy because it's almost like, and I don't think so. Even in your entire life, you would have ever had a year when you just sat at home and did nothing. All right. So therefore, it's not going to be easy even for even for our schools, the very well distinguished gentlemen that we have, even if their schools are having issues or struggle with their kids, you can imagine there are millions of students who don't even have access to technology or even online classes to say that we are struggling with a very different world over there. Mr. Rashid, over to you on the same question.
So, we were a bit lucky in Uttarakhand to start on 1st November. And for me, particularly, I think I was lucky to have almost about 98% of my students back on campus, except few from Thailand and African countries. They are not here. So we did get time with almost all of them. With class 10th and 12th, we probably get at least about 6.5 months, 6 months. So that's a good time. And I think whatever Dr. Bali and Dr. Singh said about out of practice, that's pretty much true everywhere. But my concern is not so much about some of the schools that we represent here. My concern is about the about 15 lakh other schools that exist in the country. They don't have teachers. There's no technology in tier 2 or tier 3 cities. The online classes or hybrid classes, it hasn't happened there. We're talking about another 150 million children who still they have more or less not been to school. So I think it's going to be a tough time. And the only advice I can give, and which we implemented throughout the year, was that we did all the test, writing. We said you write it down and scan it and send it to us. Whether we take, mm, how much value of that, that was a different thing. But we did say that you should write. And now also what I have done is that particularly for my 10th and 12th classes, I just put them right from 8 in the morning, well, 8:30 in the morning till about 10:30, 11 at night in the main building with couple of breaks, and let them write 3 hours papers with the book. So what we have locked down in school, in the academic building, and we have teachers of those subjects present there. So they can take their time, but they have to write 3 hours, 6 hours of writing every day. And that's going to be for next almost 1 month now. And that should hopefully help. And I do hope that CBSE will and other boards will also take care. I'm sure they will. They know it very well that it has to be done because the students have not been to school at all. But my problem, Prakshit, is not so much about exam right now. It's also about college admissions and entrance exam that will happen. And I think that is where the catch is going to be. Are we going to run into another 100% kind of cutoff? Are the colleges going to come out with their own system of entrance exam? Will the college will again, which looks like, I think pretty much like UK or US model, will start in fall. So that could help in some of those things. And we are hoping that things will improve after August
Thank
or,
you.
or something like that. But
Thank
as I said, let's just hope and pray.
Yep, yep. Dr. Saraswat, I'm, where Mr. Rashid left, and you also talked about, the higher education part. Okay, so which is where students move to the next stage. So I would want first your quick comment on what we are discussing, and then I'm going to start with you on an entirely different thing where Mr. Rashid left. First, a quick comment on this, please.
I think all my colleagues have covered this. Boys are out of practice. They would need a lot of moral support and practice. What we have seen, that's just my personal experience, that the bright kids with keen parents, they were doing it on regular basis. So they still continue to do as well as they were doing. The weak boys have come back weaker. But the middle ones, the keen students, but with average academic capabilities, have suffered the most. I think most of the schools who had the capability, they asked the boys to write their exams, write their tests, scan it, send it back to the school for the correction. But the fact remains that they cannot sit for 3 hours, cannot focus, and cannot write. And all of us together here represent only 0.01% of a student population. So we are an exception. And when exception has suffered so much, you can imagine the reality of this country.
Well said.
We are in doldrums and we need to look at it very, very seriously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Matter of future of our kids.
Dr. Saraswat, continuing with the same. Now what is happening is, and that's why I'm picking up from where Mr. Rashid left. We are talking about now universities. Gone are those days. I'm not saying like they've completely disappeared, but now universities are looking at multiple markers before admitting students. For example, the golden era, it's simply focus on your board exams. Just focus on your board exams, and they will be enough for you to get absolutely top-notch institutions. Then, of course, entrance exams came in. And schools also had what is called integrated system, coaching inbuilt into schools, and so on. But today, there is another disruption happening. Now, the universities are saying, excuse me, I'm not looking at just your marks. I also want to see what's more to your personality, right? What about your music, art, sports, and thousands of other activities, whether internally in school or outside. They're also looking at leadership. Show us leadership in school and outside. What about what about internships? What about your research projects? It's basically a lot of other things which few residential schools can boast of, that wow, we do this is part of our personality building. However, this is my question is, isn't it high time that schools will also have to train our students in a significantly different way in order to be ready for college education? I want you to touch upon this before we move to the other colleagues, please.
So two quick comments and then I will come to the point. The first is, अच्छा हुआ COVID आया. Thank God. Because anyways, we were not doing so great academically. And I'm sure that all of us would agree to the fact that we were not moving in the right direction. So that's one. Second is, the shops will shut down, the schools will reopen. And third is that there is no need to train the kids because they are not animals. Help them to realize their potential. So now what should happen ideally is that, or will happen, that the schools and leaders, teachers would be forced to bring these kids out of the four walls. And while we were spending good 80% of our time and energies only on academic achievements, we would have to divide that into 5-6 verticals. Everything else will become as important as academic is, and which was missing, at least in Indian context altogether, more so with so many things around us that each boy wanted to become an engineer or a doctor. And now we are not left with any other option but to be judicious as far as transaction of knowledge is concerned. And it is not anymore, it is not about the cerebral, learning. It is about the person. I usually, tell people that there are two distinct objectives of education. Education for life and education for livelihood. Unfortunately, till now, the tilt was towards the education for livelihood. So the entire focus, the system, infra, resources were focusing on livelihood, not on the person. But with this change, now we will start changing our focus. Rather, we'll start giving more focus on people. And this is where, people like me have been groomed into that the person should take precedence over attributes, nurture the person, and that person will, manage his life no matter what it comes or what kind of challenges this person has to face in life. So I think this is what I would like to say.
Thank you. Thank you. I,
If
I
I haven't, yeah.
yeah, I love that line. Uh, uh, Dr. Saraswat, if you could just say for livelihood and for what was that?
Like,
Education for life and education for livelihood.
Lovely, lovely. Dr. Singh, you wanted to come in there.
yes, in fact, I would really like to intervene here, and my intervention is basically on the experience what I've seen over the last couple of months. Now, when the early decisions were taken and the children were applying overseas, what I saw was I was a little fearful because I was only apprehensive about the fact that the children would not be given placements because of the disruption what has come in the world. But to my surprise and to my delight, what I would say, if I'm putting this number, it's not bragging about my school, but 59 boys out of 90 have got their first choice, whether in US, Canada, Australia, Europe, anywhere, or in UK. Many are still waiting till the 31st of March and where they will get the placements. Question is not a placement. They're already running short of seats overseas. Question is, how will they engage the students? Question is, what are the parameters of what we are talking about? Parishitji, you had a very good question. When a boy appearing for IB, he must get 42 out of 42, I mean, his scores. He looks for when he goes into a university, why doesn't he have all 45 to claim about his authority to get placed in the university? Now, one of my boy today, I would be so happy to say he's got into Cornell with 130% scholarship. So it is not blocking the road. It's only putting the data correct. It is putting the perspective correct. How are they engaging in the universities? The styles and a little bit of disruption has come in there. It's going to weigh a lot on aptitudes. It's going to weigh a lot on personal interviews. But I must tell you, if children are applying overseas, their personal essays are going to be a very relevant factor. And if they have written their essay with their heart and they've given a genuine approach, I'm telling you, Mr. Parikshit, world is not going to end there. They have a very good future. They've got a better competition now in the foreign market. Where Indian people, where I'm concerned, we're opening to the Indian universities, I'm sure that we have to engage. And that is why, if you allow me to say this, the boards, what of course Mr. Bali was talking about, whether we are talking about IB, IGCSE, ISC, or whatever, these are mere agencies which give you a certificate of an examination passed. They do not define your school. Your school runs on a curriculum. And that is where we normally get very, very, confused. What is the syllabus covered for the board exam and what is the curriculum of the school? I think now is the time where NEP has entered and given us a red flag already. We need to engage ourselves in designing our own curriculum. These curriculum have pillars. These curriculum allow child to take a risk taking. This curriculum allows a boy to take part into sports, into activities, apart from academics, which designs his personality. And this is what the universities are looking at, a holistic picture of a child. And when they apply, it's not only academic performances or the transcripts. It is important what all other activities the boy has been engaged in. Is he involved in social activity? Is he responsible towards the society? Is he a sportsman? He knows how to handle failures. So there are many other things. So what I want to give a hope, and I want to second Mr. Bali again and again what they are saying, it's an opportunity. We must stand on a platform, shout it out loud that we are on a platform which is a launching pad today. And this is an opportunity the boys and girls of our country should not miss out on the opportunity. Universities are there. Universities will always be there. But this challenging year, the admission processes may change, but the number of admission will continue to delight.
Thank you. Thank you. Some very insightful observations, both from Dr. Saraswat and Dr. Singh. Mr. Roshan, going to you now. Now, I'm just adding a little bit more to the question. Now, what I'm saying is, maybe we are blessed to have certain kinds of schools where, as Dr. Saraswat talked about, that there are multiple areas that we need to, facilitate to get the best potential out of our students, right? So it has to be academics and a lot of other areas. But what about tier 2, tier 3 cities in the country? What about, as Mr. Rashid talked about, we have close to 15 lakh schools. What about schools where we are still hung up on science, science, science? What about schools where the only thing that we talk about is academics, academics, get those marks, right? So what I'm saying is the universities are going to look at very different parameters. How would the school deal with these challenges going forward? Yeah, over to you, please.
Yeah, you asked me a huge question about the entire country and 15 lakh schools and how they're all going to sort it out. So I wish I had the answer. What I would say is this, that we are essentially in a tier 2 city. We're not a high fee school, there's definitely I as a school leader who's come from a particular set of background and whatever, I might have views about getting away from that mindset, but the mindset that you just described of science, 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 that's fairly representative of schools like mine, despite attitudes of individual leaders. But of course, there is the glimmerings of a shift away from that. And again, as Dr. Saraswat said, the COVID has been a good boost in that for us. So for us, COVID has given us the boost that we need to do something that frankly we should have done years ago, but fine, at least it's happening now. And that is sitting down and really thinking at the philosophical level that what is it that we want our education to be about? What is it that we want to be preparing our kids for? And then how are we going to build the systems to reflect that inside the classrooms? And so that's been, this is an ongoing process in our schools right now, and all our principals and many teachers are enthusiastically building plans even as we speak, where we've identified, certain skill areas that we think are absolutely essential skills for students to have. So of course, there's the big four, which are almost cliche now, in terms of, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. I mean, I say they're almost cliche because they're repeated at every forum, but they're not truly reflected in a lot of classrooms. True. And so it's something that we're breaking down the curriculum. How are we going to really gear our curriculum towards these things? How are we going to create the space and time away from that sort of bashing the syllabus and create time for this kind of skills-based education? And how are we going to support teachers to deliver that? Teachers are already extremely busy and overwhelmed, and one-off training seminars and things isn't going to cut it. We need to have integrated coaching and a lot of very active support for our teachers, and we need to create a lot of time for that. So it's sort of real restructuring that needs to happen to enable these things to happen. But apart from these cliche 4 C's, we want to expand to what some academics like Michael Fullan are calling the 6 C's, where we want to really focus truly on character and citizenship. Right? So these are 2 more. Right. How do we reflect that in the classroom? Because when we talk about a changing world and all these different opportunities and careers going out there, of course, we need to give them the career guidance, and I'm sure we'll have a discussion on that, and that's a huge topic in itself. Yeah. But what I want to say when it comes to citizenship and character, these are the define for students their purpose in life, the mindset with which they approach any sort of decision as to why they want to pick a particular career, how they want to use that career to contribute meaningfully to the world, what do they want to achieve, in this life. That's what comes from a sense of citizenship and global citizenship and that identity of a student, and indeed the strength of character. So to work to deliver that in classrooms, that's not an easy task, but that's something that it's a journey we've embarked upon. And we realized that in our tier 2 environment, it's realistic, we can do it, and we are doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I'm just breaking the chain here. Okay, Mr. Roshan, you raised 2 points here. Okay, one, you talked about, holistic career guidance, right? And of course, Dr. Singh, Dr. Saraswat, and I think Mr. Rashid and Dr. Bali have also talked about the emotional, socio-emotional areas here. Dr. Bali, I'm going over to you. Okay, I'm just changing this. As Mr. Roshan talked about career guidance, what in your, what would you suggest? What role would career guidance play in, especially today, 21, and also now NEP is also coming in. All right, so there are so many changes happening up. What role would career guidance play today?
I think it's not just about career guidance. Career guidance has to be social, emotional career guidance. When I say socio-emotional, there is large population in the country which is driven by the emotional pressures or the social pressures to choose their careers. We are still living in a society where a child is not allowed to choose the stream or the subjects he or she wishes to, right? We are still living in a society where if a child takes humanities, it is considered, oh, if nothing else has happened, that's why he ended up taking liberal arts subjects. So it's very important that we focus on socio-emotional career guidance program, wherein we create, as Roshan said, we create those 4 C's around them in everything which they do in school. So that is where our responsibility as the head of the institutions is, that we give them enormous opportunities to think out of the box, to be critical, to be creative, and then show them the world that the professions which they are going to get in or the courses which they are going to get in do not exist today. I don't think we are far away from a time when a doctor will be operating while sitting on his dining table. I don't think we are far away from a time when you may even have an engineer come medical degree, wherein an engineer will be required to work on the robot who is going to operate at the end of the day. We already had a discussion of mathematics and physics being removed, or at least they thought of removing it from engineering,
Yes.
exam or engineering curriculum. Again, that is debatable because there are certain aspects, certain subjects which are necessary for a particular field to be. But I think it's not just career guidance. I think we have to relate it with socio-emotional career guidance, wherein we need to educate the society at large. We need to change our mindset. The moment we look at this in a holistic manner, that is when the change will start. So that's what my views on the career guidance is. It's not just career guidance, it has to be beyond that. You have to involve parents in regularly, effectively. You have to involve each teacher in the classroom. You have to involve them so that they relate and connect with the student in each interest which they have. Only then it will succeed. By just calling a student in your office, in the career guidance office, showing a list of universities, having the safety net, okay, these are the 3-tier universities, you apply, you do, that is very mechanical process. That is one of the reasons why you have a lot of engineers ending up in film industry, or a lot of business graduates ending up in starting agriculture, right? Because they were not guided properly in the first place. So I think that is what we need to look at, a larger picture.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Rashid, just one request to the Mindler team. If you're here with us, there are a lot of questions that are being asked by our participants. My request is please answer those questions. And I would also request my esteemed panelists, wherever you get a chance, the questions are in the Q&A here. If you could answer 2-3 of them, and then by that time we would have answered most of the questions. So yeah, Mr. Rashid, over to you. I would like you to talk about, where Mr. Bali left, Dr. Bali left, please.
So just to add to what Mr. Gandhi and Dr. Bali said about C's, we are talking about 6 C's. I would add 2 very important C's, and that is courage that you will need to teach and to imbibe, and compassion. I said these are the 2 key C's that you will need this year, and then of course years to come out of a pandemic situation. So careers, if you look at new education policy, and if you have read it very carefully, you know that the government is already working on some of those things, moving the curriculum and assessment from rote learning to inquiry based to analysis and research, of course. but also with the foundation of, at least they propose the foundation of a Parak, which would be the assessment center, and also National Testing Agency, which would probably conduct a uniform test for all entrance exam. I think this could change some of those things. And in fact, if you look at it, engineering, AICTE, they're also already talking about open book test, not just the regular test. They're talking about internship. So these are some of the things that will help in to a student in getting into probably a better fit college. And of course, the career counseling has to now probably change accordingly in terms of talking to them slightly early, not essentially in terms of one career or one stream. Even even NP doesn't now recognize that. It allows movement from one stream to another. You could pick up a physics as well as a history. And I think this is something what the US universities and the UK does. And I'm sure if it can be done there, why can't it be done here? It has to move from just marks and those percentage that you get.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for really bearing with us and answering all those questions and giving us some distilled wisdom and insights there. My quick question. Okay, I have just two questions for my panelists now. Dr. Saraswat, let's start with you again. It is that in the middle of all this, when we are talking about socio-emotional, and we've also talked about the role of parents, how are schools reaching out to parents today? And this is, I just want quick inputs from all of you, because parents are such an important stakeholder in a student's journey, and more so in these unprecedented times. Dr. Saraswat.
As far as I am concerned, I had never spent so much of time talking to the parents as I have done last year. We engaged with them group-wise, class-wise, and even in smaller groups. And on average, I would spend 3 to 4 hours interacting with the parents and just talking to them. And I must tell you that it has helped us immensely. And I'm a very happy headmaster of this school, because we did not have even a single issue where there was any difference of opinion between the parent fraternity or the school. So the only way to deal with the parents is that you be open, upfront, talk to them, listen, try to understand that where is it coming from, have a lot of patience with them, because it's for them also, it is for the first time that they are spending so much of time there with their kids, and they don't know what to do and how to engage them judiciously. And they have got their own fears, they have got their own challenges in life. So what we thought is, and don't take it as a big statement, but we thought that now it's not the student we have to look after, we have to actually care for the entire family, and it became an extended family.
Thank you. Dr. Singh, your quick comments on that.
Well, I have something very important to say here, because these two stakeholders, when we talk about the teachers and about the parents, they always said parents are the first teachers and teachers are the second parents. That role has suddenly reversed. And what has happened now, that suddenly the parents who have been watching the teachers now teaching online, so the classrooms have entered into the dining rooms and the bedrooms of the people. And they've suddenly realized what a sacrifice and what a role the teachers are playing. And a lot of parents who have given a call back, whose boys have not come back for more than a year now, they are finding it very difficult to understand how to control the children. And they suddenly have realized the importance of the gurus in their life. And what I really mean to say here is, the two main institutions, when I'm talking about the parent and about the teachers, these two institutions are now to marry each other. When I'm talking about marrying these two institutions, I'm talking about the ethos, that these two important stakeholders will have to come and only look towards the progression of a child now. Whether with a compassionate heart, the schools have to reach out to the parents, understand these are unprecedented times. We have never seen a time like this. We need to have a compassionate heart. There are parents whose business, whose incomes have suffered. We need to provide scholarships. The school have to stand up to the parents. And not only this, where people were crying about the fees and all. I think this is the time we need to have taken a view from a very different angle and think about the child and think about the parents. We all have gone through a 360-degree turn. And in this turmoil, let's support each other. Once we support the parents, once we support the anxiety of a parent at this moment, I'm sure the parent body will come back and hold the school as if a baby in the arm. And I'm sure these two institutions are going to stand very important in time to come.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Roshan, slightly a different question for you. You see, it was easy while we were preparing our students for class 12th exams. And November, December used to be the time for pre-board preparation and Jan. And then by Feb, March, they're writing the board exams. However, if you look at this year, J is February, March, April, May. And boards are also happening in the month of May and June, right? And right in the middle of the board exams, I think 11th of June is economics. And I think 12th or 14th, you have business studies, then you have psychology. I think 18th is business. So, I mean, and in between, you have all the other non-STEM exams. So my question to you is, how is the school dealing with all this?
Well, first, really, we're worried about the heat at that period of time. Normally, the exams get over by
February or early March.
Exactly, February, March. So, before the real hot season sets in. Now these kids are going to have to be sitting in stuffy rooms and, representing the sort of tier 2 where we don't have air conditioning in exam halls. So we're looking at solutions for that, because actually our principals, their first thought was, oh God, the performance is going to go down because the kids are going to be so uncomfortable. So this is a big thing that I think a lot of schools are facing. I can see even comments on the chat that others are agreeing. So we're looking at, maybe renting standing ACs that can do this kind of thing. Apart from that, it cuts into the period which is normally the holiday period. So our poor teachers who, they worked like crazy the entire year, and we all know how how hard they've worked to transition to learn technology, the kind of fatigue that comes with sitting behind a screen all day, and because of the nature of the situation in UPM with our schools, we even had them working partly through the summer break last year. So these poor teachers are in need of a break, but they're going to have to be facilitating all this stuff throughout this period. So that's one thing that we have to keep in mind. That's certainly very much in my mind, that again, we're going to have to push back the time when they have a break, but we need to find time for it somewhere. We're going to have to squeeze it in at some point of time. So this is also a concern. With regard to the parents, this year, I think that trust has actually increased between the parents and the school, because the school has been in the parents' home and they've actually witnessed the kind of hard work that teachers do. They've often been sitting there with classes, especially in the lower years, where the teachers have almost been like the parents have almost been like a teaching assistant to the teachers, which is great. So that kind of trust and understanding of what goes on has increased, and our ability to communicate with parents more frequently and more often, it's become a very normal thing that teachers are constantly in touch with parents. And so that's been a great help, and now they're continuing to do that just to persuade parents and give them that ease and that confidence about sending kids back.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I go to Dr. Bali and Mr. Rashid again, dear participants, you are listening to the school leaders and you see their reality. It's not an easy ride for any one of them. Okay, we look at the difficulty that we have faced, but look at how schools have to maneuver their resources and come to the rescue. It's not been easy. Dr. Bali.
Sorry to interrupt you, P. So Dr. Saraswat has to go. He's already given us a lot more time than
please.
Just wanted to thank him.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Saraswat, for spending
quality time
for this and sharing your distilled wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Regrettably, I also have a hard stop, actually.
Absolutely. I am on to my last question and last question. Dr. Bali, just quick question. I know we've already overshot. Okay. One, you talked about the AICT, and of course, I just don't want to lose that opportunity. So AICT one fine day said maths and physics is not important, but of course they've retracted the statement. But however, one day if it becomes a reality that that okay, now the educational institution, which is the higher education, will take care of the foundation programs. Now, how does it affect the entire school curriculum?
I don't think it affects the school curriculum in a big way till grade 10 or till grade 12, because I'm a strong believer that a foundation in mathematics and sciences is extremely essential, at least till grade 10. A child needs to be involved and evolved in every aspect of curriculum, be it liberal arts, sciences, mathematics, and so on and so forth. Grade 11 and 12, at the moment, the syllabus is set keeping in mind the NEET preparation or JEE preparation, etc., etc. I don't think it will affect the school education much, but it will help in evolving the school education further, where you will not have a single track mind. You will look at more horizons, you will look at more opportunities, you can look at more creativity and so on and so forth. I am more concerned about the decision makers, whether they take into consideration all the stakeholders or not.
True.
This decision of coming in that maths and physics not required and then retracting means you did not do your homework well enough. If you had done your homework, it would have been a completely different story, right? So it's in any educational institution, how many of these educational policies, they involve stakeholders of different fields across the country. Now, it's not about school teachers or having 5 school principals on the board. You have ICSC, ISC boards, you have day come boarding schools, you have boarding schools, you have scenic schools, you have international baccalaureate, Cambridge, CBSE, state board, budget schools, so on and so forth, minority institutions. Do you get representations from all of them? I think that is where the decision makers have to take a call. And I hope someday our governments and decision makers start looking at it from that aspect. Any decision, I don't think will make any difference at the education level in school. School education in India is respected the most around the world, just like the undergrad in the US. And there is a reason, because educators at the school level or the leadership at the school level has always risen to the challenges. I think that is the key in Indian education, but it will become better if you start involving them in the decision making. That's what I feel.
Thank you. Thank you. Last quick, 1 line, 2 lines from Mr. Rashid and Dr. Singh, and then we are done for the day, please.
Dr. Singh, please go ahead.
He wants to take the final word, and I'll quickly say that what we are contemplating upon, what will happen. I completely endorse my views again, that the MOD and the decision makers who are sitting down and planning about education, I hope they understand the nuances of education. I hope they understand the real problem the boy and the girl today are suffering in the classroom. They need to redesign, they need to rethink how their future path would be. They need to recreate a new future for the students of India. Why can't we have a new benchmarks today? And these benchmarks will have to be made, have to be contemplated. If it doesn't happen now, believe you me, NEP is too far away. We do not even have a document policy right now. It may go through 100 of changes before it comes to the floor. Let's not bank too much on NEP. Let's think about the post-COVID era. And this post-COVID era is going to be a lot of exploration and a lot of innovation in education. Let's really think on that. Thank you.
Dr. Singh, thank you so much for sharing that line. And it's just that I'm always trying to be politically correct. You nailed it. I always tell that, listen, NEP needs right implementation. I'm kind of trying to be soft. And you came really hard on that, yeah, let's not bank. We will see when it is implemented. Right now, let's deal with the elephant in the room right now. Mr. Rashid, last word from you.
NEP does have some of this, really positive point if you look at it. Inquiry-based learning, they're talking about analysis, they're talking about research, they're talking about end of a assessment exam, which would happen over the year, not just in one lot. So if all that happens as it's planned, it will probably take about another 5-8 years to put into place. Then I'm sure with some of those interdisciplinary things they're talking about, no streams, some of these things may take shape maybe in 10-15 years. But what you need is, of course, first to train your teachers. You have no teachers in so many lakhs of government schools. You have 45-50 students and one teacher. So I think those things need to be looked at. Policies are good, and what you need is the resolution and courage to carry it through. I think that will be important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all you distinguished panelists. And I'm so happy that you could take out time on a Friday evening and be with us. And thank you so much. I can't thank you enough, participants. Dear educators, you've been with us since morning. Many of you have joined just for this. And I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much for making this happen. And I hope with your thoughts and wisdom, I hope the educators and the policymakers are also listening to us, and hope better wisdom will prevail. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Parikshit, for having us on the panel. Thank you very much. And thank you, Aishwarya, for holding us here.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Vansh, Mr. Nathani, are you there? Okay.
We really need to
Right
thank
here,
this
right
young
here.
man.
I would also
thank
like
you.
to thank all of them.
No, thank you so much for making time, and thank you for being here. It feels like being back in school again, having all of you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Vansh. Thank you for having us all here.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bali.
Thank you very much to all our esteemed panelists for joining us today and sharing your experience with us. It was really amazing listening all of you. Your insights, your thoughts, your procedure is really amazing. And thank you so much to all our dear educators and ICCC participants. It was really, really lovely to have you all with us throughout the day. And it's just a small request before we sign off. Please join tomorrow's session exact at 8:45, where Dr. N.K. Chadda will certainly be in giving you enriching session about the psychometric testing overview. So do not miss, and please use the same link to join the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
sir.
you very much.
All our guests have left.
Yes.
We're live.
Okay. All our guests have left. So therefore, now I can also say goodbye and go and have a cup of coffee. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you, Vansh. Vansh, you look sharp. Very nice.
Thank you, sir.
Good boy. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye, sir. Take care. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.